Hey, I hope your day is going well, and I thank you for spending a few moments of it with me. I don't know about you, but I have kind of a love-hate relationship with magic. I love it because it's entertaining. I especially love the up-close tricks like a coin trick or a card trick. It just mesmerizes me. But in the same vein, I kind of hate it because it drives me crazy. I keep thinking, how in the world is this done? Is there some sort of prop? Is there some sort of special equipment? Is it sleight of hand? How exactly is this working? Because of that, there was a TV show a few years ago that I really enjoyed that was called Breaking the Magician's Code. It was pretty simple. You had a masked magician so that you wouldn't know who it was, and he would do some tricks that you have probably seen either in person or on TV before. And he would show the illusion, and then afterwards he would show how it's done. I loved it because it was entertaining. It answered my questions. But ever since I've seen that show and I saw how these tricks were actually done, they never fooled me. They never deceived me. Why? Well, it's obvious. Because I knew how it worked. You know, it's that same thought that prompts me to start a new devotional series today that I'm calling In the Arena, Fighting Against Temptation. And the premise is pretty simple. If you understand more fully exactly how it is that temptation works, hopefully it is that you won't be fooled by it. Hopefully it is that you're more successful as you and I, as followers of Christ, experience temptation. Because today, tomorrow, every day in the future, already today, and later today, you have been and you are in the arena against temptation, where you're experiencing these opportunities where you can go outside the bounds that God has prescribed for us to operate in. We're going to start today and in the first couple of installments thinking about temptation through the lens of the first experience with it that occurs for us in Genesis chapter 3. You're probably familiar with it, and it is that Satan has taken the form of a serpent, and in verse 1 of Genesis chapter 3, he comes to Eve at the end of verse 1, and he asks her a question, and he says, "Did God really say you can't eat from any tree in the garden?" That's the beginning of the temptation, and then you see how it winds up in verse 6. That it says that she took some of its fruit and ate it. She was tempted, she was in the arena with temptation, and she lost. It was a knockout blow. I don't want that for me. I don't want it for you. God doesn't want it for any of us. And thankfully, He has let us in on it. He's pulled the curtain back about temptation so we can see how it works. And in seeing how it works, hopefully we can experience more success, more victory in the arena with it. So today, this is the thought, very simply, I want to leave you, which is this. You are most vulnerable to temptation in isolation. You are most vulnerable to temptation in isolation. This passage does not explicitly tell us that Eve was by herself, but I believe that she had this encounter, this experience, this temptation with Satan when no one else was around. I say that because of two thoughts. The first comes to us in 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 4, where Paul says that it was not Adam who was deceived, rather the woman was deceived and transgressed. If you go to verse 17, even of chapter 3, we're told, as God is confronting Adam and Eve both, He says, "Because you listened to your wife and ate from the tree about which I commanded you." So this is what I believe is going on, that Satan comes to Eve, that she experiences this temptation when she's all alone, when she's by herself. I say that because of the 1 Timothy passage. I say that because of even what we see here in context. And I believe oftentimes that's when temptation is most successful against us. And it's because we are most vulnerable when we are away from everyone else. I mean, there's no way to actually prove the answer to this, but let me ask you, or lead you to think about this. If Eve experienced this not in isolation, but with Adam, do you think the story would have had the same ending? You know, as for me, I really don't. I think the story would have had a dramatically different ending. And I believe behind that is an important lesson, which again is that you and I are most vulnerable to temptation when we are isolated, when we're off by ourselves. Why is that? I think it's because when you are removed from the knowledge of, the awareness of, the oversight, and sometimes even the accountability of others, you're prone to do things that you would not otherwise do. Why is that? I think it's because we have this thought operating in our minds. It's just me and no one else will know. In response to that, let me just say this. You are never completely alone, and there is never an instance where no one else will know, because at the very least, there's nothing that catches God by surprise. There's nothing that I have done or will do that He will not be aware of. So you're never completely in isolation. And secondly, it is that we operate, most often, we operate inbounds when we have other people that are looking into and looking over our shoulder, that are looking into our lives. So what do you do with this? Well, first of all, I would encourage you to be intentional in saying and praying to God and say, Lord, will you help me today to actually be consciously aware of when I am experiencing temptation? Can you cause in my mind a red flag to go up so that I know, okay, I'm actually being tempted now? And as that happens, do everything possible to try to make sure that you experience that temptation around others, if it is at all possible. And maybe it could lead you to go to someone who is a trusted confidant, or maybe you pick up the phone and say, listen, I'm really struggling with whatever it is, and just get that other person to come alongside you and to speak into your circumstance. And finally, while I understand that every one of us needs some personal time regularly, I realize that. We all need that. I don't want you, and I don't believe it's good for any of us, to race towards isolation. After all, it's in those situations, it's when we are experiencing isolation that I believe we are most vulnerable to temptation. You and I are both today, we're all going to be in the arena against temptation. You don't have to lose against it, but you're going to have to fight, and you're going to have to fight hard. God bless you and have a great rest of your day.